What's up, YouTubers? It's Jeff with GearTube TV. Starting out in the dark house, heading out to the garage. Got two things coming at you today. One of which is something really, really awesome. The other of which is something that I think's nice that I figured out. And it involves the Jeep. So let's head out here to the garage. There's the Jeep, there's a mess.
Say what?
I just got a lot of stuff. I mean, tractors and kids' toys, and obviously the Jeep. But, so what I figured out, if some folks may remember Butterfingers, if some folks can remember, or either remember me talking about or remember seeing when Nick had the Jeep, the gauges don't often work. And by gauges, I mean the tach and fuel gauge. So hopefully there's enough lighting here, and let me show you what I mean. Kill switch is on. Prime a little bit of gas in it. And watch the tach. Okay. It's fine that it didn't start. I'm not very worried about that, because the point I'm trying to make is you see that the tach is starting to work while it's cranking. Now let's see if I can actually get it started. A little more fuel. Okay, so as soon as it started, the tach stopped working. Okay, so now watch this. I don't know if you'll be able to see or not. If you can see my hand, I'm starting to turn the key towards the start button on the ignition switch. Notice how the tach started to work again? And now it's working, okay? So what that tells me is the ignition switch has an issue. And there it goes. So I found that what I believe is going on is either the ignition switch itself is bad, or it somehow is rotated forward a little bit, so that when the key rests in the on position, that it's not giving power. Instead of on, it would be like an accessory position. So it's not picking up the tach and the fuel gauge. Now what I'm wondering is if it's something that I just need to replace the entire ignition switch, or if it's something that I can just get into the steering column and, you know, mess around with the ignition cylinder. Realistically, I'm leaning more towards just replacing it. But here's what I also wonder. If the tach and the fuel gauge are only working when it's turned towards the start position, it could be wired wrong. I mean, obviously everybody's seen under the hood of this thing, the wires are trashed. So I'm glad that I figured that out, because when Nick told me, you know, well, the gauge sometimes work and the gauges sometimes don't work, and I'm thinking, well, there's got to be a reason. It's either a grounding issue, and for more than one gauge to not work, that's why I was leaning more towards a grounding issue, because one gauge not working, you could say, okay, well, maybe it's the wiring of the gauge, or maybe it's the gauge itself. You know, I don't know, it could be something like that. But when you have multiple gauges that don't work, okay, first thing I think is a ground. So anyway, what I think it is the ignition switch. I've never really worked on them, but I assume it's very easy, because just looking at the steering column itself, it's not that complicated. I mean, right there's the ignition cylinder cycle. Ignition switch cylinder underneath this plastic housing. So I'm guessing that this plastic shroud just comes off and gives you access. Now, I could be wrong, but it's something I'm gonna have to do a little research into. And then I will probably, as far as replacing it, I assume that it's a rather large connector that goes down the inside of the column and then connects to another large connector for the rest of the wiring. If I put a new ignition cylinder in it, then obviously I need a new key as well, and that's fine, I don't care about that. But if that doesn't fix the issue, then I just threw money into an ignition switch that I technically don't need. On the other hand, it's a 1988 Jeep, and if the ignition switch is original, that's a very long time, and it could probably benefit from a new switch. Regardless, that's what I found, and now on to the exciting part right now. Okay, so it's time for the awesome part of today's vlog.
Drum roll, please. Drum roll.
Is that I finally got a sponsorship. GearTube TV has been working to get sponsorships to help out with different parts of the Jeep build, because obviously it's very expensive. And you know, the reality is, if I still want this to be a drag racing Jeep, it's going to take more sponsorships and more participation and help from viewers, and possibly even some crowdfunding or crowdsourcing, whatever the actual correct term is for that, which is why I have the Patreon account set up as well. But yeah, CSE Off-Road out of New York. They are specialists in Jeep parts and accessories, and I was in communication with them, and they decided to sponsor me a little bit for the Jeep with some lighting. And I couldn't be happier about it. I'm going to show you here. I already opened the box because I was curious. But so yeah, I'm going to get the camera here. Now, like I said, CSE Off-Road, you'll find all their information in the description below, and they really hooked me up big time with this. What I have here is new front turn signal housings for both sides. Totally awesome. And that's the other one. They also hooked me up with the turn signal lenses that go in the fender flares off the side of the Jeep. So I got both of those, one for each side. Totally awesome. And the big bone that they threw me is new rear lighting. That's kind of difficult to hold this camera and do this. Yeah. Brand new rear lights for driver and passenger side. Totally awesome. Check them out, CSE Off-Road. I'm going to have, again, all their information in the description below. There's their information. CSEoffroad.com, LaGrangeville, New York. If you have a Jeep, YJ, JK, TJ, anything like that, hit them up for all your parts and accessory needs. So awesome to have them on board sponsoring me with some of these lights, and I really appreciate it. I can't speak highly enough of their owner, Gene. Totally awesome guy, very easy to talk to. I mean, we communicated with email quite a bit, and I hooked Gene up with a shirt and a coffee mug. So Gene, look forward to getting those things in the mail here shortly. I did check shipping. Both items should have shipped, so hopefully they'll get to you here in a very short term, and I hope you enjoy those as well. But seriously, thanks again, I really appreciate it. My first sponsor. So again, CSE Off-Road, and you know, I'm trying to work with Corbeau to get some seats for the Jeep, and they want the Jeep to be a little further along than what it is. I can't necessarily blame them, but you know, it still takes a lot. So the more subscribers I get, in theory, the more ad revenue I get, and it makes it a little bit easier, because right now I make probably 50 to 60 cents a day for my YouTube work, which obviously is taxable once you reach a certain threshold. And you know, it's not a lot of money, and it's okay because I enjoy doing YouTube, and I'm loving doing this Jeep build. But to truly make this a drag racing Jeep, it's going to take a lot more. And the awesome thing about it is, even if I fall back on my word, you know, I told Nick I was going to build this and it was going to be a drag racing Jeep. Even if I don't make it, it's still going to be a pretty awesome Jeep and very off-road capable. So there can be a new direction to go with very minimal modification, because it is already lifted. It does already have oversized tires. Just a little bit of work in it, and it can be a really cool weekend type vehicle and off-road vehicle. So with that said, this is GearTube TV. My name is Jeff, and please check out my links below. I have merchandise for sale. I also have the Patreon account where you can become a patron as well, with a monthly donation towards GearTube TV and what we do here. And also obviously information for CSE Off-Road, which will be down, up, left or right. Somewhere on the screen I'll have their name as well and their website. Please check them out again if you're in the Jeep market. Very easy to talk to, awesome folks out of New York. So anyway, thanks for stopping by. Super excited to have this sponsorship. It means a lot to me. And we'll catch y'all later. Take care now. Bye-bye.